Here she is, my baby. Finally, all done making my modifications. Like you saw in the intro, it's been about 3 years since I got it, so it's been a long road. It's a 2014. I got it in 2015 used. I actually had to go halfway across the country to get it because it is it's the RT model, but it also has the Road and Track package and the Super Track Pack, which means that it comes from the factory with 307 gears in the back. It came with upgraded suspension and brakes and steering for a performance package right from the factory. And then of course I made some future improvements on after I got it. So the first thing that I did, which you can probably tell when I backed out of the garage, is it actually came to me with a Corsa Extreme exhaust put on, which is a nice system. It's the same system I had on my last car, which was a 2006 Mustang GT. So anyways, the Corsa Extreme wasn't quite loud enough, so I had the exhaust modified a little bit further to make it pretty loud. And I like it. So then after I got the car, the first thing I did was, even though it came with the upgraded brakes from the factory, whoever had it before me, they must have driven it pretty hard because the rotors were pretty scored. And so I just went ahead and I replaced everything with a power stop, cross-drilled and slotted rotors there. They work really nice. I kept the calipers the same, but yeah, it stops really good now. The next thing I did after I got the car is what I do with all my cars is I had to upgrade the stereo system. I'm a big audiophile, and so I always like the cars to sound really good. It came with the Beats audio system, which is the top of the line for the RT model. If you got the SRT8, I believe there's a Harman Kardon, which supposedly is a really nice system. But in the RT, the top of the line was the Beats audio, and it came with that. It's 10 speaker, 550 watt. Came with an 8-inch sub in the back, which wasn't big enough for me. So I swapped out the 8-inch sub for a Rockford Fosgate Punch 12-inch. Then what I did is I replaced the front speakers in the dashboard. There's 3 of them up there, 3.5-inch speakers, and I replaced them with some nice Infinity models. So it's got some nice bright highs. And then in the back, what I did is I got some Diamond Audio tweeters and put them in the back there. You can see I mounted them on each side because there just wasn't enough high in the back for me. It's got 4 6x9s in the front doors and on the rear deck. I actually tried 3 different brands of speakers to replace those 6x9s, and with decent brands, and believe it or not, the stock ones I think sounded the best, so I put them back in. Some of the other ones had a bit clearer sound to them, but they almost sounded a little bit too crisp and harsh, and they didn't have as full of a sound as the stock speakers. So I believe the stock ones are Alpines, which aren't bad. They're only paper woofers, but they've got a pretty decent sound to them. So then, yeah, what I did is I got a Cadence 5-channel amp to power the 4 6x9s in the car, as well as the sub, and then I put in a separate little Sony amp to power the tweeters on the back deck. So it sounds pretty nice now. You can see that the sub, I actually I got these cargo straps, and I went through the floor of the trunk, and I went all the way down, and I basically kind of tied them in to the spare tire, which is bolted to the car. Because in my previous cars I've had subs like this, and I had the whole thing's velcroed to the floor, but I'll admit it, I drive my cars pretty hard, and in the past I've hit some corners and I ripped the velcro right off the bottom of the sub and sent it flying across the trunk. So I didn't want that happening in this car, so it ain't going nowhere. The only problem of course is when I have to get to the battery, I got to take the whole thing apart, because in this car the battery is actually in the trunk. So but it sounds nice. I didn't mess with the head unit because the stereo was tied in with the touchscreen where we had the navigation and all the climate controls, and I definitely did not want to mess with that. So it's the stock head unit, and then the stock amplifier powers the dashboard speakers, but everything else is aftermarket. So let's see, what after I did that, I put in a cold air kit on the engine. I put in an electronic shift kit, which I would highly recommend to anybody that has these Chargers or the Challengers in an automatic. What it does is you basically tie it in to your transmission control module. You kind of tap it into the wires, and then you can hook it up to a laptop, and you can adjust it however you want. You can adjust the shift points for each gear. You can adjust how hard it shifts for each gear, both upshift and downshift. You can also adjust it independently between your standard automatic drive and when you're using the paddles. So if you want to just have a nice, nice gentle shift normally, but then when you go to the paddles you want a nice hard shift, you can set it up however you want, and it works really well. You can chirp them in the first couple gears, which is great. Feels good, sounds good too. So after I did all the stereo and a little bit of the performance, I didn't do too many performance mods on this car. Normally I like to center a lot on the performance, but since this is kind of a beast and it's a big heavy car, it's never going to be a really fast car unless I put a lot of money into it, like a supercharger or something like that. And so I was working on a relatively tight budget the whole time, so I focused mostly on the aesthetics and other things rather than the performance that much in this car. So the next thing I did was I got these Giana Blitz wheels, which I thought looked really nice on the car. They come with the inserts there. Those red are actual plastic inserts that you can take off. They come black when you buy the wheels. I originally had them painted a bright red to match the calipers there before I got the graphics put on because they kind of stood out. But then this past week when I had these graphics done, I took off the inserts and I painted them a darker red, kind of a maroon, to match the graphics, and it looks really nice. Let's see, what else did I do with this car? One of the things I did is I got an actual fully functioning Ram Air hood scoop. Kind of looks like the old TA hood scoops from the old TA Challengers back in the days. I thought it looked really nice. That was one of the few things I actually had professionally done, obviously, because I had the hood installed and painted at a professional shop. Most everything else I did by myself on the car. And then before the graphics on the side, the last thing I did was to dress up the engine bay because I planned to show this car. So it took me about a month and a half to do the engine dress ups, mostly because it was toward the end of winter and I had to wait for it to get warm enough to actually do all the painting. So here's the engine bay. I thought it came out really nice. It took a while to do. There's no decals anywhere. Everything is painted. And that's one of the reasons it took so long, is I would have to do a layer and then put down some decals and then do another layer and then peel up the decals and everything. But it came out really well. So we got the Mopars on the strut towers there. And as you can see right here, it ain't a 426, but it's a Hemi. One of the problems I had is that this main engine cover, paint just does not like to adhere to this type of plastic that it's made out of. And even though I put kind of like an adhesive adhesion promoter on there, it's starting to lift off a little bit. You can see in the front here where the paint is starting to crack. So pretty much I just leave this off of the car unless I'm going to a show, and then I'll go ahead and put it on for the show. But I don't want to worry about having to clean it too much. I haven't cleaned the engine recently. It's not looking too bad. But so this came out really well. And this was the last thing I did right before the graphics on the outside of the car. So there you go. 2014 Charger RT. Has been nicknamed Fastest by my daughter because right after I got it, that's when the Fast and Furious movie came out that had the Charger in it, so she named it Fastest, short for Fast and Furious. So thanks everybody, have a good day, and Mopar on.